dispatcher's voice crackles through static. "Sir, put your hands on top of your head. Go ahead and go to your knees." Moments later, police lights bleed across the quiet Utah street, flashing red and blue against the snow. Inside the house, everything is still. Too still. When officers step through the doorway, they find 62-year-old Suzanne Meyer motionless on the bedroom floor. One wound, no struggle, no chaos, just silence. Outside, a man waits calmly on the driveway. His name is Dave Meyer. 69 years old, retired, soft-spoken, and disturbingly composed. The first thing he says to the officers is as casual as it is chilling. "I killed my wife." But the horror of that night didn't begin with the gunshot. It began 11 years earlier, with an accident that shattered Suzanne's spine and slowly unraveled everything the couple once was. What began as devotion turned into dependence. What looked like care became control. And somewhere along that slow descent, mercy and murder started to look the same to Dave Meyer. Over the next few hours, his confession would twist between love and guilt, pain and power. And the truth he revealed, about his wife, their life, and what he did after pulling the trigger, would leave detectives questioning not just his story, but his sanity. The tape begins to roll. Dave sits across from the detectives, hands folded, expression flat. He starts speaking like he's recounting a sad memory, not a crime. He talks about Suzanne's pain, about the years of failed surgeries and sleepless nights. He paints himself as the loyal husband, trapped, compassionate, and broken by the sight of his wife's suffering. Then he says she asked him to end it, that she begged him, and that he loved her too much to say no. But detectives have heard this tone before, the calm of a man rehearsing his innocence. And soon the story he so carefully built will start to fall apart, one quiet lie at a time. Dave leans forward, his hands clasped, his voice steady. "She was in pain," he says. "For years. I couldn't stand to see her like that anymore." His words hang in the air, flat and rehearsed, like he's told this story to himself 1,000 times before. He tells detectives that it began with an accident 11 years earlier. Suzanne, once a competitive bodybuilder, had been struck while jogging. The injury, he says, destroyed her back and left her in agony. She could barely stand, barely sleep, barely live. He talks about the surgeries, steel bars, failed treatments, doctors who never listened. The tone is clinical, detached, but there's something off about the way he describes it. It isn't grief, it's narrative control. He calls her strong, beautiful, a fighter. Yet every word he chooses pulls her deeper into his story, not hers. And when he finally describes the moment it happened, the details are almost unbearable in their simplicity. He says they were lying in bed. Suzanne had begged him again. "Please," she said, "I can't live like this anymore." He claims he was rubbing her back when he lifted the gun and pulled the trigger. Dave Meyer says he stayed in that house for 4 days afterward. 4 days. He says he was in shock, paralyzed, unsure what to do. But the detectives know better. Shock doesn't take out the trash. Shock doesn't walk the dogs or buy groceries. Surveillance cameras would later show him doing exactly those things. Calmly, methodically, as if nothing had happened. So when he says, "I was in shock," it isn't a confession. It's a script. A story built to sound tragic enough to earn sympathy and vague enough to dodge accountability. And there's another detail, one that no one can verify but him. He insists that Suzanne wanted to die, that it was mercy. But Suzanne isn't alive to confirm it, and when the dead can't speak, the guilty tend to speak for them. Detectives listen. They let him talk because every detail matters. Not what he says, but how he says it. The calmness, the self-pity, the way every sentence loops back to him. In his version, it's always about his pain, his struggle, his loss. Suzanne becomes little more than a backdrop, a prop in the story of his suffering. But when the interview ends, detectives already know what they need. The story is too polished, too practiced. Somewhere beneath the calm is a secret that doesn't fit the narrative. And soon someone else will start talking. Someone who knew Suzanne far better than Dave ever expected. And with that, the cracks in his version of mercy begin to split wide open. She exhales. "My sister did not want to die." Her voice trembles, not with uncertainty but fury. "This is a woman who had plans, who had Amazon packages on the way, who called me every morning to check on our mom. She was alive. She wasn't hit by a car like he says. She was jogging and got bumped by a bicycle. It hurt her, sure, but she fought through it. That's who she was. Then she says it. She never, ever asked to die. That's when detectives realized the story Dave told. The accident. The suffering, the mercy, and it's all starting to fall apart, but what she says next chills the room. He used to make her do things with other men, and he'd record it. The detective blinks. How do you know that? She told me, the sister answers. And I have the texts. She goes on, calm now, but with the kind of rage that's been building for years. He never hit her, but he'd pretend like he was going to. He'd scare her, control her. Everything about him was about power. He's a narcissistic sociopath. He always makes himself look like the good guy. It's suddenly clear what this mercy killing really was, and not compassion, but control. The final ultimate way to dominate the person he could no longer manipulate. He didn't end her pain. He ended the one thing he couldn't control anymore, her freedom. Detectives now have two stories. One, the calm husband claiming mercy. The other, a terrified wife trapped by a man who'd spent years rewriting her reality. But the truth doesn't stay buried long. Because when another woman walks into the station, one who knew Dave in a very different way, the entire illusion starts to shatter. And what she revealed next changed everything. Detective, you said you wanted to tell us something about Dave Meyer? The woman nods, barely meeting their eyes. Yika, I've been scared. My husband doesn't know I was seeing Dave. She confesses she'd been in a relationship with him, not years ago, but recently, February to October of 2021. Every word comes out like she's unloading a secret that's been eating her alive. I loved him, she says quietly, but I wasn't going to leave my husband. I don't think he was going to leave his wife either. I tried to end it, but he had a way of making you feel like you couldn't. This wasn't a man driven by mercy. It was a man driven by possession, the need to own, control, and discard. Dave Meyer wasn't grieving a dying wife. He was eliminating a burden, the woman continues, her voice breaking. He told me he loved me, said his marriage was dead, and then one night he said, she won't be around much longer. That single sentence, casual, rehearsed, premeditated, changes everything. Dave didn't just snap. He planned it. If he had the presence of mind to do chores, he had the presence of mind to dial 911. But he didn't. Not for 4 days. He spent those nights sleeping beside the body of the woman he killed, not in panic, not in shock, but in silence, as if even in death he refused to let her leave his side. Detectives find a note inside the bedroom, scrawled in Dave's handwriting, no more pain. But it wasn't Suzanne's message. It was his, a twisted eulogy to his own guilt, or maybe the lack of it. He didn't kill her to end her suffering. He killed her to end his. And as the investigation unfolds, one truth becomes painfully clear. Dave Meyer didn't just take his wife's life. He rewrote the story of her death, to make himself the hero of it. When the case finally reaches trial, Dave accepts a plea deal, guilty of murder, in exchange for leniency. In May 2024, Judge Joseph Bean looks him in the eyes and sentences him to 15 years to life in a Utah state prison. He walks away without emotion, the same calm he carried through every lie, every manipulation, every confession. And so in the end, Dave Meyer didn't just kill his wife. He killed the truth, one lie at a time, and mistook his own darkness for mercy. Some crimes leave behind blood, others leave behind silence. But this one left both. Suzanne Meyer's story isn't just about a marriage that ended in tragedy. It's about control, about the slow erosion of a person's soul, until love turns into ownership, and compassion becomes an excuse for cruelty. Dave Meyer spent years rewriting their life into a narrative he could live with. He made himself the caretaker, the savior, the man who ended his wife's pain. But mercy doesn't come from the barrel of a gun. And love doesn't ask you to disappear. She was strong. A fighter. A woman who lived for her family, her dogs, and the gym that gave her purpose. And in the end, the person who claimed to love her most became the one who took everything away. For 4 days, he lived beside her body, not mourning, not broken, just existing, as if pretending that silence could rewrite what he'd done. But silence doesn't erase truth. It amplifies it. When Dave Meyer confessed, he thought he was controlling the story one last time. But what he didn't realize is that truth has a way of surviving. It lives on in her sister's voice, in the text messages she left behind, and in the justice that finally caught up to him, because behind every calm confession, there's a storm of guilt waiting to be heard, and for Suzanne, the world finally listened.